I'm Jessica Ganawa, a lecturer in international relations at Flinders University in Australia, and I'm checking in today with Maxim, Professor of International Relations at the National Aviation University in Kyiv. Thanks for talking to me today, Maxim.
Welcome, always welcome, Jessica.
So we've seen recently that, and somewhat surprisingly, I guess, that some fighters have managed to be evacuated from the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol. It seems that they're still in Russian-controlled territory, and it's not 100% clear at this stage what's going to happen in terms of them making it back onto Ukrainian-controlled territory. There's some speculation, is this the absolute fall of Mariupol into Russian control? So can you comment on what's happening right now with the situation in Mariupol?
Well, actually, evacuation, as we call it, is over. Just yesterday, Minister of Defense of Russia declared it, and even President Zelensky stated it. But we call it evacuation. Russians call it surrendering. That they surrender it, yes. And some who are wounded went to hospitals. It's about Novazovsk, small town about 30 kilometers away from Mariupol, but it's so-called DNR territory. The rest, some were taken to Yelenovka. It's also occupied territories, Ukraine. Some went to Donetsk, but fighters from Azov regiments, a lot of them already in Russia. In Rostov region, Taganrog, it's a town also in Azov Sea, but it's already territory of Russia. So, as you know, they were not only Azov regiment, they were even policemen, special services, National Guard, armed forces, so taken all together. And so now they filtrate them. And as I mentioned, some, so they differentiate them into, they send them into different regions, filtration camps, prisons. There are a lot of also military doctors, yes, medical services, women, and now they differentiate them and use already for its propaganda, especially taking into account that our commanders of Azov and Marines were very popular commanders. They were given interviews, videos recorded. I already saw the video with Marine Commander Valina, his nickname. He surrendered, yes, he was captured, but we don't know information about commanders of Azov. As Russian official mentioned, they took them also, but just a few days ago we still saw a video from Azovstal. But I guess the situation now, operation is finished, and now you know, I wrote about it in my analysis before even I understand how the situation will be going on, because for Russia now they use it in their propaganda as the biggest victory, the capture, occupation of Mariupol, and of course Azov regiment especially was the symbol of resistance. As you know, about 3 months They were in besieged city, surrounded without any supply. So they are real heroes, and there are no such examples in the history, in the military history of such resistance under such conditions. And of course, now they will be trying to ruin this myth, yes, of heroism. Vice versa, actually, Russian propaganda was based on exactly Azov regiment is in the stem of their propaganda. Like a neo-Nazi regiment, we discussed with you this myth, this propaganda earlier. They were building it for 8 years. And of course, for those Putin supporters, they enjoy watching it. They wanted them to be killed, and now they don't want to allow them to be exchanged, even in the State Duma, it's the parliament of Russia. They are preparing legislation not to allow to exchange representatives of Azov regiment. And of course, Putin received a tool, serious one. He will be using it in negotiations, because in Ukrainian society is very excited, and we were watching it, and we're hoping them to be rescued. We all support that. The most important that they are still alive, because there was no possibility to save them by military means. And President Zelensky yesterday, in his first big interview during last 3 months, mentioned that he was asking Western governments, leaders, to give necessary weapons for us to be able to set Mariupol free. But they denied. And a lot of our pilots died because they were trying to evacuate them, to bring them food, water, to take wounded on helicopters. And unfortunately, it's true. So they knew that 90% they would be killed, but they still flew there. And the same, a lot of people, soldiers, were ready, even knowing the risks, to go there to set them free. But taking into account that it's about 100 kilometers and steep, very difficult geography for it, it was almost impossible, and needed special weapons, because air defense systems, there are a lot of them, I mean Russian ones, and it was very difficult to get there, to fly there. For example, aircrafts and helicopters, as I mentioned, still try to do it, and some of them were successful, but unfortunately a lot of them were shut down. So yeah, as you know, I know already the history of 8 years war, about exchanges, how Putin denied, though there were a lot of prisoners and even militaries, Russian militaries, captives in Ukraine, he denied to take them back. And of course, he will be using them now, this exchange, to push on Zelensky, to in further negotiations. As you know, now they are stopped. We do not keep negotiations, only on some humanitarian aspects, but not as for peace talks. They are over now. So, as I told you, it's a big tragedy for Poroshenko, for example. He had two such cases, Ilovaisk and Debaltseva, two big tragedies of Ukrainian armed forces when Russia used their troops, regular troops, to surround. And after it, Minsk agreements were signed. So for Zelensky, it's a Mariupol. Such case, it's even much bigger. And of course, Putin will be trying to force him to sign Minsk 3 or Istanbul 1, so new peace agreements. He will be trying to capture new occupied territories under his control. And it will be a long history. And of course, he will be trying to undermine political situation in Ukraine, as he was doing it the same with Debaltseva, with Ilovaisk, with our captives, because, as you know, this topic is number one, not only in Ukraine, Mariupol, I mean, but also all around the world. And he was also trying to manipulate, to press on Western leaders. He was denying constantly, as you know, to do the extraction. It was a possible option proposed by President of Turkey, Erdogan, even Pope, as you know, proposed of the head of Catholic Church. But he was denying understanding that he can use it and to make profit out of it, because we, I mean, Ukrainians, treasure our soldiers. And that's the biggest difference between us and Russia. Because, as you know, as President Zelensky yesterday in his interview mentioned, for the first time, they started talking about possibility to take back their dead soldiers. Before that, they didn't care at all. There are thousands of them in refrigerators waiting, and we were proposing them to take them back. As you know, Ministry of Defense for more than 2 months don't change and doesn't announce any casualties. Nobody is killed, etc., etc. So only now they started thinking about it, because still the news are spread in Russia that there are a lot of killed. Some people come back. They call, I mean, captives alive. They call to their parents, and information still penetrates into Russia. So I guess Mariupol and heroes of Mariupol is the strongest argument in Putin's hands to press, as I mentioned, on Zelensky and Western leaders to save his face, as we call it in Russian. I translate it. Yes, there is such a saying, to save his face, to meet his demands, to come to compromises. Though, of course, Ukrainian society is not ready, but he knows how to use it, and he has a lot of experience, unfortunately, to use these weak points as he considers. Yes, these humanitarian aspects.
And do you think for those Azov soldiers, I mean, obviously you don't really know the answer to this, but I'm just very interested to hear your perspective. I mean, given the last 8 years of history, they must have known better than anyone what it would mean to end up in Russian-controlled territory. But do you think that making that decision to leave Azovstal, they were given assurances that they would actually get through to Ukrainian-controlled territory, or do you think it was simply a matter of having no food and water left, so there wasn't really any other option but to leave Azovstal? Like it would kind of mean death either way.
Well, actually, it was an order. Their militaries, commander-in-chief told them to save lives because, first of all, there were a lot of wounded, a lot of women. So our commanders also took care to save their lives because they couldn't give any medical support. They were just dying there. Mm-hmm. Because they ruined hospital, which was there. So they didn't have any medicine. And also I was following the news, the wives of Azov regiment guys were writing that no food, no water is left. So it was obvious already that there is no military solution. And firstly, they decided to evacuate wounded and women. Then some, as I told you, they were not only representatives of Azov regiment, and still we don't have full information. Maybe some of them are left there, and they were negotiations, and Red Cross, United Nations took part of it. As I wrote myself, it's very good that we know the number of them. So there are observers and attention of international society to this question, I would say, gives them chances to be alive and not to be humiliated, as it usually happens. There are a lot of such cases. I know myself, those who, it's better not, my friends who are in the army, they told that it's better not to get into captive, not to surrender. They leave last patron for themselves, because if you get to them, you anyway will be killed, but you will have such tortures no one can imagine. And those people who are found already dead, killed, seen these humiliations and tortures, it's unbelievable. Especially there's Kadyrov's Chechens. They enjoy torturing, humiliating, like I can't even call them animals, because animals don't do such things. They are absolutely unhuman. So taking into account that there is such an attention of international society, media, it gives them chances at least to survive. But still, I'm sure it's gonna be a long story. I mean, the process of exchange, especially I underline it concerns Azov regiment. Those policemen, usual militaries can be exchanged because we have also a lot of captives. So they will do it, and some of them we already had during at least 3 or 4 times. A small amount, but 40, 50 people, but still it takes place. So some of them just to show the West that how they keep the rules of the war, Geneva Convention, as you know, etc., etc. They will be using it, but of course, Azov regiment representative soldiers will be the last in the list, I would say.
Yeah. And finally, just briefly, I want to ask you, if you don't mind, like, obviously you grew up in Mariupol and lived there almost your entire life until you were an adult. Is it a strange feeling for you that Mariupol is now possibly under full Russian control and it won't be possible for you to go back to your home city?
You know, it's the most difficult thing. Just a few days ago, it was anniversary of my father. He was 85 years old, though he died more than 17 years ago, and he's buried nearby Mariupol. And usually every year I was going to the cemetery, was talking with him, and I realized it's just 25 kilometers away from Mariupol. And not talking about that, I was visiting my mother, going with my son, and I was brought up there. Of course, it's very difficult to realize that I can't know for sure when the next time I can get back there. It's one thing. Another thing, it's even terrifying to think, even, for example, tomorrow we set Mariupol free. But to go there and to see this ruined city, completely ruined, because it's like, it's already habit. I start the day and finish the day watching the news, photos, videos about Mariupol. I see not only my native city as a whole, district, places so dear to my heart, and it's absolutely ruined. And of course, it's difficult even to watch video, but I'm sure it will be much more difficult to see it with your own eyes, what Russians have done to city. So it's a great, it's a huge cemetery now. So everything is ruined, and so all around the city there are graves in the yards, near houses, near my house, and everything is ruined, and it's a very difficult even to think about it. And it's a great psychological trauma, and for those people who survived in that hell, I'm not. I was told a few days ago my sister came to Kiev. We met with her for the first time since evacuation, and of course these stories she was telling me, it's just well, I can't even express my feelings. It's a real hell, and to go there to see that hell, I guess even after we set Mariupol free, I'm sure we will. It will take some time and efforts to go there to see it with my own eyes.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, thanks for sharing your update with us today, Maxim.
You're welcome.